Hello, family. My name is Stormy. I am an alcoholic.
Hi, Stormy.
I relate to what you say, Boz. I'm definitely glad I know that today. I have no idea what's going to come out of my mouth. Probably a lot of tears will come out of my eyes, and I don't care. I notice when I listen to some people tell their stories and speak that they seem to have like this idea or a pitch or whatever because it sounds similar when I hear it over and over again, but I never prepare because it wouldn't matter, because anything that I would prepare I would forget. And like I said, I've been through a week or two of some stuff, and today especially was very heavy for me. So to be speaking after today's experience is extremely nauseating, honestly, and I hope that I can keep my pulled pork sandwich down. Yeah, so I want to say first that I love this program. I love what it's done to my life, and I love that I know in an inkling of a way that what it's doing to each one of your lives, and I feel an amazing power in this room right now. What it's done for your families, your employment, all that stuff that we wreck by drinking, and how it gets fixed in here by working the steps and enlarging our spiritual life. Gosh, I just keep thinking when I think about who I was before I ever even touched alcohol, what happened after I picked that shit up, and who I am now, it blows me away. I was born in an alcoholic family, and when you said, let's take a moment of silence for the alcoholic who still suffers, a lot of faces that pop into my mind are my nieces and my nephews, and not my grandnieces, but you get the idea. It's so many people in my family have died from the disease and are in the disease right now. And there are other programs that I go for that. So, so in that alcoholic family, it was so bad between my parents that there was 5 of us, and all 5 of us were taken out of the home. We were in a very small town in Iowa way back when I was a baby in the 60s. Wow, I busted my age. I don't know. I was just a baby, but they did take us away. I guess that's equivalent of, is that CPS today? I don't know what it is. And we were all split up. And so the idea of family has always been a big riddle to me. We were each put in different foster homes, and we weren't reunited ever, really. The youngest of us were reunited when my grandparents stepped up to the plate, my father's parents, and adopted the ones that they could. But, by that time, my eldest sister had seen so much violence and so much alcoholism that she was already on her way, down this road, and she was too much trouble. So I never got to be around my oldest sister. So you would think, what I found interesting was that no one ever gave me any idea what the heck was going on. No one ever talked to me about, where's mom and dad? I just, we were all of a sudden just at my grandparents' house, and no one ever talked about it. And there was a lot of, this chair is very deep. I have to do this. There was a lot of abuse in the foster homes, sexual, physical, mental, and that wasn't just me, that was my brothers as well. So needless to say, I was not keen on human beings in general, and specifically suspicious of my caregivers. But I was lucky and very, very grateful that my grandparents took us in. There was a safe home on a huge farm, in a cool farmhouse, meals on the plate, good education, all of that stuff. But there was that secrecy thing, like this big puzzle, do I say anything? Like, do I ask anybody where my parents are? And there was just this weird, what's the word? They didn't show affection. No affection whatsoever. And I remember the siblings that were there, we would literally form this cheerleading squad and say, come on, Grandpa, give her a kiss, give her a kiss. Because we would see like affection on TV, but nothing there. And really no affection to us kids. So a lot of things were really, really bizarre. I remember one night, we went to church, this Methodist church, and we would sit in the pew, and I don't even remember ever really acting out, but I remember my grandfather would reach over and grab the hair on the back of my neck and yank it if I ever acted up. So there was a lot of firm physical discipline. I mean, right in the middle of church. I mean, I didn't know what to do. Amen! I mean, whoa! So there was a lot of pieces of the puzzle that I didn't really get, and in church they talked about God and this loving God, and I was like, who is this person, and why hasn't he showed up in my life? I remember this one time when I was up, like right before bed, it was evening time, and my doubting mind was looking at the stars like I still do. I'm totally a star fanatic. And I said, oh yeah, if you're God, you make that star go out. And for whatever reason, cloud, be it vapors, I don't know, but it went out. And I was like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. And I'm like, but if you're really God, make it come back. And it came back. Now, I know it's just weird, but I think it was a heck of a sense of humor. And the higher power concept, understanding that I have today is still right on time with that kind of sense of humor. But I found it interesting that it wasn't enough that it disappeared. I one-upped it and just could not accept this concept of a loving God. And another time I remember, we lived on this huge farm, 101 acres, huge pastures, dairy cows, Keg Creek. Oddly enough, it was named Keg Creek. I should have known I was an alcoholic then. I always spent time down at Keg Creek. And on my way down, on one of my little loner adventures, I remember seeing this bird that was deceased, but one of its wings was broken off. And just this calloused, angry, scornful spirit of mine that I did have ever since I was a little kid, out of disrespect, purposely took the wing and threw it as far away from the other part of the body as I could. And it was totally disrespectful. And I went on my adventure, and on my way back, I kid you not, it was back together. And I was like, what? That's some freaky shit. But I just could not accept this idea of a power greater than myself. So just before, I just so angry and so upset and so misplaced in the world. And in ninth grade, I actually attempted suicide. My grandmother had heart troubles, and she had heart meds. And I just waltzed right into her bedroom without saying a word to anybody. I think I broke up with a boy. Something didn't work out. And I took the whole bottle. And I quietly snuck upstairs, and I waited to die. I just laid down in bed. I didn't even know what the pills were. And then I got scared all of a sudden, and I ran downstairs and ratted myself out. I took all your pills. And they're like, holy shit. Because it was nitroglycerin, and it's supposed to slow your heart down. But I was so scared when they got on the phone to the sheriff. I'm like, oh, hell no. So I started running down that pasture, and in my running, I equalized my heart rate, thankfully. But I got a nice little ride to the ambulance, with the ambulance, and got to drink a nice little charcoal cocktail. But just to set the story right, alcohol was not even in the picture yet, and I was clearly already warped and self-absorbed. I didn't pick up until I think it's old. I was talking to someone today and they thought it was normal, but I didn't pick up till I was 18. I hear all these stories now. I picked up when I was 7. I'm like, what? But I was 18 and I didn't even drink a lot. I just maybe drank a beer or something. I think I even just took a sip off of it. And they talk about how alcoholics have that euphoric feeling immediately. You know, that warm, tingly down the neck into the shoulders thing. And I was like, whoa. But I had already promised that I would never be an alcoholic because my parents were alcoholics. And just so many people in my life were a hot mess because of alcohol. So I was like, well, we're putting that down. And I didn't touch it again till I moved down to be with my mom, who was a blazing alcoholic. That was an interesting thing. It was kind of like when in Rome, do as the Romans do. And I was of that age where it was time to party. And it took off pretty quickly. And my mom was the kind of drinker who would binge drink. She would be like Ma and Pa Kettle in the kitchen one day, frying up some chicken and being totally cool. And the next day you could come home and she'd be chasing you around with a butcher knife. And you never know which one it was. So she was a terrifying thing to live with. I remember one time I had, I think, 3 periods in a month because I was so, what's Mom going to be today? So I started partying just to get away from her and got into weed and all those other things. But lo and behold, the miracle that I never thought would happen is that my mom actually went to treatment and got sober. And that's where I was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous. They had some family night or something at the hospital, and I went, to be the good, supportive daughter. And I fell in love with y'all, and I wasn't ready to quit doing what I was doing, but I did just so I could hang out with you. Because there was that, I was afraid of love and support and caring and compassion, and yet I was magnetically drawn to it at the same time. So I actually tried it. I didn't try it. I tried being dry for a couple of years. I came to the meetings and shared and listened, but I never worked steps. I had a sponsor who was a florist, I think, and I never called him. And after 2 years, I decided that I wasn't an alcoholic after all. And I used to make fun of this fact that I actually went to a meeting and gave everyone closure, let them know that I was incorrect and that I was wrong and that I was not an alcoholic. But it was very nice knowing you. And I left. Now, I used to make fun of it. But I'll tell you now, when people in the rooms disappear, I wish they would have fucking done that. Because there's a lot of friends of mine that just are here one night and they're not. And you don't know what's going on. So as weird as it was, I wish y'all would do that. Well, actually, I wish y'all wouldn't do it. Just stay. Just stay. So, the part that they talk about, the allergy and the obsession of the mind and how our disease is progressing even as we sit here in this meeting, I used to thought that was kind of like an extreme statement. They just say that to keep you scared. But I'm here to tell you that is not true. That was a true statement. I had never blacked out before I got into the rooms the first time, but the first night I went out, I blacked out. And I was a blackout drinker. I would say I was a daily blackout drinker, but because I blacked out, I don't remember. But I always drank to extreme. And that went on for 10 years. And in that time, there were a few other substances that got involved as well, but not nearly the scary stuff that they've got out there now. And the person that I became morally was disturbing to me because I was raised by really moral people, super grossly boring moral people. And I think having been raised in that environment and then becoming something so much to the antithesis of that was difficult for me. I was a classic thief. I loved to steal. I used to steal from my grandfather. First, it started off as cookies from the cookie drawer. There's always photos of somebody stealing cookies from the cookie drawer. Then I graduated to rifling through his sock drawer for Snickers. And then I found that under the Snickers there was money. So I did that. I got caught for shoplifting when I was, I don't know how old. So in in drinking, it kind of made, you had to up the odds. So I would steal the company car at night and take it out on strolls and try to make it back with my hangover. There were some times where I passed the CEO on the way in, and no one ever said anything, but I did all of a sudden get fired one day, but they never told me why. And I remember also stealing another vehicle. I almost want to talk to Richard Quinones because he's such a car thief. I never lived up to him, but just that thieving, and I wasn't much of a cheater, really. Like, I wasn't like lascivious or lustful, but I did a lot of cheating and slept around with other people's partners and just that stuff that, just gross. I was the girl that, oh my God, I swear, if I could have $1 for every gallon of vomit that I put on this earth, I would be rich. I was always that girl who'd come to the party. I'd be on for like 5 minutes, and then I had drank so much alcohol that I would just plaster your house. Never got invited back to any parties, ever, ever, ever. And the blank spots of the night before always filled in, and they were never good news. I almost didn't want to hear it. So this went on, and I did a couple of geographics. A couple of the drugs that I used, it's like I wanted to have chemical peace of mind, but a few of them really kicked my butt and were far too expensive and required me to be completely immoral. So I tried to say, okay, I'm gonna taper off that one, but I'll try these two. And alcohol was actually the middle one. I didn't get rid of all of my chemicals. I got here 10 years later after my last drunk, which was, and I was hard to get along with anyway, but if you put a little alcohol in me, then I got really suspicious and sensitive. You know how it is. And there was one night when all my buddies were, I don't even know what they said. They probably just gave me a cockeyed look. So I already had a 6-pack in a half an hour. That's the way I drank. And so I just grabbed my most priceless possessions, which was all my marijuana and a bottle of perfume. I have no idea why I had to have that, but I did. And I had it in a little satchel next to my hip, and I took off to this Outback Steakhouse that was under construction. Perfect place for me. Dark. Nobody was there. It was quiet. I could cuss everybody out under my breath. And I was up on this construction sawhorse doing some weird, I don't know, teetering or whatever, trying to be cool. And I fell down, and the perfume bottle broke and gashed my leg. So I'm bleeding, and I'm like, oh gosh, I'm going to have to walk home, get to a Band-Aid, something like that. And I finally get home, and they wouldn't let me in. I don't even remember having been there before, but I obviously was violent, and they had locked me out. So, like any one of you, I'm sure, you would kick the kitchen window in as well. So that's what I did. I'm like, this is my house. So I kicked it in, got in, nobody was there, I thought. And I was so angry that they would lock me out. So I began to just rip the place up. I kicked all the banisters in, broke them all, and I smeared my blood all over the walls. Total Carrie scene from the movie Carrie. And I walked in, and I opened up the back bedroom, and there were my 2 roommates huddled like little kittens with racquetball rackets ready to defend themselves. And I almost cried. I was like, oh my God, that's real. So I ended up, let's just fast forward, went to jail that night, went to the hospital, and went to, you know the saying, jails, institutions, death? Well, I hit jails and institutions that night. But without knowing it, in the blackout, I had stolen the bail money from my roommates. So I pulled it out of my pocket and posted bail and dared to call them for a ride. Because I had forgotten, I had already done all these horrible things. I had even forgotten the kittens with the brackets. Obviously, they didn't come and get me, but I got a real keen sense that I was a monster, and I didn't want to be a monster anymore. So I remembered those good old AAs back in Kansas City, and by this time I lived in Denton, Texas, but I was at an AA meeting the next night. But I was still not ready to give up my chemical peace of mind, so I went in, loaded on something else, and I did that for 11 months. And I was not able to feel as though I could connect with you guys because I was on something. And still yet some sort of a miracle was happening as I was listening to the stories that everyone would share. And that magical compassion, kindness, family type energy that I longed for was here. So there was one day that I decided, I knew that alcohol didn't work because there was countless attempts to make alcohol work for me. Countless. I mean, and I don't give up on anything, but I gave up on trying to make alcohol work. And by that time, marijuana wasn't working. And I said, I'm just going to kill myself. This isn't working. I hate life. I can't stand doing this stuff. And this voice, this like conscience, my conscience piped up and said, you might want to actually try the way of AA. Just do that. Just do that. And then if it doesn't work, great. Kill yourself. So I got to an AA meeting and I asked someone to sponsor me. I admitted, like I'm polite. I admitted to everybody that I had smoked weed. They were like, yeah, we kind of noticed. And I said, but I want to do this. And something had changed in me. I was going to any length, or I was going to lengths. Nobody knows what any length is until you die. I mean, there's other lengths to come. But I was in Denton, Texas, and I was walking miles and miles in that humid, hot heat to get to my sponsor's house. And we would meet weekly, and we would work steps. And I was staying clean, and I was starting to feel better, and I was taking a service position, and all of this stuff was working out for me. And I decided that I was going to move to Flagstaff to chase a girlfriend. And I was terrified because I had about, at that time, maybe 6 months put together. And she's like, hey, I-40 goes both ways. If you don't like it, come back. I'm like, well, that was awfully brilliant. So off I went. And the first thing I did when I got here was go to an AA meeting because I knew if there was a chance for anyone to run into somebody with a joint on the side of the road, it'd be me. So I got hooked up in AA in Flagstaff immediately. And I have not done it perfectly, and there have been times when I wanted to tell everybody to go to hell, and probably did, and disappear. I do these little disappearing acts every once in a while. But as a result of working these steps, slowly and gradually, I have become more and more transparent and more vulnerable and more genuine. You know, for the first 2 years of recovery, I didn't want y'all to know I was even having a bad day or had any bad thoughts or, did any bad things. And so I didn't really share genuinely. I would either not share at all or I wouldn't go to the meeting if I wasn't feeling up to it. And I remember one time I have cervical stenosis. And every once in a while it'll flare up, and I was having a really bad flare up, and I couldn't work. So I was all wrapped up in myself and feeling pity party and prenatal in the bed and feeling all sorry for myself. And something that someone had said in a meeting maybe, or maybe it was just my higher power, just said, get your ass on your knees right now. And you pray for other people that are feeling the way you do, because no one knows better than you do how they're feeling. I'm like, well, okay. So I did, and I was like, and then I'm like, I'm going to a meeting. I just got out of bed and I realized it's that connection. No matter where I was at, no matter what I was feeling, I could still be of service to my higher power. I could still have a purpose of loving and caring and giving. And so I did. I ended up going to a meeting and later went up to visit good old Karen, who had just had an amputation. I'm like crying in bed because I don't even know. I can't go to work. And she had her leg cut off, for God's sake. So I ended up going to visit her and being of service. And that was my new focus. It's like, okay, I'm off for 6 months. I guess I'm your buddy, Karen. And things like that just happen to work out in program as long as I'm willing to stay connected. It's that old childhood thing of disconnection, that has haunted me and has made it difficult for me throughout my life. There's been so many spiritual experiences in this program as a result of trying to forgive myself, trying to forgive my family, allowing a God of my understanding to really trust that I wasn't just cuckoo and I wasn't making shit up, but that I deserved to have a concept that made sense to me. I think the religion that I was involved in, just the very nature of it, didn't accept me as I was. So I had a resentment against that. But when I got in recovery, that concept, that idea, and I'm like, well, if God's going to talk to me, he's going to talk to me in my language. And so I started spending more time in nature, which is where I feel safe. And things started happening. I think that happens for all of us. If we're open and we're looking for it, it starts to come. And it comes that way with me all the time. My spiritual connection is my most treasured experience in life. I'm still human, and I still struggle with my human relationships. But I do a lot better. I spend a lot of time alone. That's why I do better. But my relationship with my higher power is to the point where I can surrender. I remember a time when I was out in Garland Prairie when I lived. That's when I started coming to this meeting. I lived in Garland Prairie and I was heading out the door. This is, I don't know how many years sober I was. And it occurred to me, it's like, why don't you ever say, watch over my house? Why don't you ever say, watch over my animals? And within seconds I said, because I wouldn't trust a God that would let my parents fuck me over and let me. I'm like, whoa, dude, that was honest, but now you need to get real. So I had to do a lot of work with that. I remember this one time. I'm a procrastinator and a neglector, and if I can procrastinate, I will. And there was a storm, and it had hit. And I had no wood in the house. It was blizzarding outside. So I'm like, oh gosh, I gotta go get some wood. So I go out to the woodshed, and the wheelbarrow wheel is flat. I've got it full of oak and juniper, and I'm trying to wheel it in, and the wheel's flat, so of course it spills over. All the wood pours out into the drifts of snow, and I am angry. I'm angry at God. Of course, it's God's fault that all this happened, right? So I pound my fist into the snow, and I'm like, give me a break, God. All my animals flee the scene. The birds fly out of the trees. I take that wheelbarrow and I just hurl it. And I'm all alone. I'm all alone. No one wants to be around me. I've scared the shit out of everything that lives near me. And I'm sitting there alone, and I feel this incredible, incredible love just gently pour over me. And I knew. It reminded me of the kittens with the racquetballs. It's like I saw that I was a monster and that my God loves monsters. And I, at that moment, realized that is a God that I could call my authority. That's a word I don't turn over to anybody. But that is like, okay, that is what I can say. I can turn my will and my life over to that. So this is all like my spiritual life continues to evolve. And so I'm going to close with this. I have gotten better about including my family, not my blood family, you family. I went through something that was horrific last Wednesday. I came out, I won't go into the details because it'll make me start crying, but my horse has been with me for 18 years. And I went out last Wednesday morning, and he was down on the ground. And he was in deep, deep colic and in a lot of pain. And I immediately reached out to people, just like, fuck, pray, 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 pray. And I would never have done that before. I never would have felt that I would want to trust something so scary to me, so intimate to me with anyone else, lest they not understand how important it was. And he did die. He did die last Wednesday. But this whole week I've been carried this whole week with friends showing up with flowers and cards and thoughts and soups and brownies and love and love and love. And today I did a ceremony with somebody to clear all of the negative sadness and all my doubts and regrets and all the wonderings of what I did wrong. And I sit here in this chair today feeling like Alcoholics Anonymous is the reason that horse had such a good life. And we had such an incredible connection. And that I can share it with you guys now in this way. Maya, you know what I'm talking about. She's so sweet. Anyway, so I've gone, because of AA, from a broken, disconnected, hateful, scornful, bitter human being to probably one of the biggest mushballs you'll ever know. Just so incredibly in love with life. You know, twists, turns, everything. And I owe it to this program and the people in it. Thank you for letting me share. Whoa.